and please ask questions in the chat and we'll bring them to the fore at the end of Professor Smeaton's talk. So I'm very pleased to welcome Professor Alan Smeaton. He's Professor of Computing and the Founding Director of the Insight Centre for Data Analytics at Dublin City University. Alan's here today to tell us all about the Flourish module and student experiences of using their data for well-being. In the interest of time, I'm going to hand over now to Alan, and we'll see you all at the end of the session. Thank you.
Thanks. And Grania, can you give me a thumbs up if you can hear me and also see the slides?
I can indeed, yes. I can hear you and see the slides.
Okay, so I want to thank Aisling, who's my #1 fan apparently, because she's been bigging me up all morning, name dropping me. I want to thank Aisling for inviting me to give this presentation. And I will come back to the point, some of the points that were made by Liz and Michelle. I am that person. I am that data analytics person who does all those predicted stuffs for in predicted student predictions. There's a couple of links that I'm going to ask Grania to post into the chat, which will give you some distraction to look up to sort of complement the talk, and during the talk she will post them. Thank you, Grania, for doing that. So my background is that I work in data analytics, have done for many years, in a variety of applications, from computer vision to anything you can think of. Okay, and I've been using student data and the application of analytics to student data as one of those applications. Aisling alluded to a presentation that I gave, and it was about 2015 or 2016, which talked about a system we developed to use student access log data, their VLE data, to help their completion rates. And that was a project we ran for 2 years. We applied it to year 1 modules only. And those modules had big numbers, as in large numbers of registrations. They had high failure rates, as in like 30 or 40% for, I think it was mathematics for business students. That was an example of one. And what we did was we took the archive, or the log, of the previous 5 or 6 years of students who had accessed the VLE, assumed that the course material had stayed the same, and built models to be able to predict the likely pass or fail or even grade of the current students. So what we did was we built that model of all that past data. We took the present year's students, and by week 3 or week 4, we were able to look at their access to the VLE, compare it to previous accesses from previous students, and give them a hint as to their likely outcome. And it resulted in improved throughput and improved grades for the modules, and it got some awards and some recognition for that. But it comes back, I'd like to come back to William's question that he asked about students and the creep factor associated with that, and being logged, and all of your accesses to the VLEs being logged. What we were doing was we were just using the click-through things that students would do on the VLE, which is exactly the same that Facebook and Instagram and every other damn system that you use does. Except instead of using those clicks to promote advertisements, we were using those clicks in order to determine a likely outcome. Liz and Michelle both commented in their discussion, a spin-off discussion about that, that the technology which is developed by the likes of me does need to be embedded in a people-centric surrounding, and that is exactly what we did. We worked with our colleagues in the School of Psychology in how to present this information back to students. And at the time, this was 2015, we didn't have a great big dashboard. We sent it as a weekly update, as an email. So every Friday evening, students would get an email, and they would only get it for the modules to which they had opted in and for which they were in first year with a large number of other students. So we looked at things like the wordings. We wouldn't use an absolute number like you're heading for a 57% on this. We had them graded into tiers. We had each email sent as a progression of the previous week, as in, looks like you've done more this week compared to last week, so you're on the right trajectory, well done. And we had a set number of cut and paste emails that were automatically generated. We applied this to about 2,000 students in first year who opted in to do this for the modules that they had registered, which had expected high failure rates. And when we did this, we found that about 75% of students chose to receive those weekly emails. We applied it to 20 modules. We did it in the first year, and it was a success because our colleagues in the university who do the analytics, including Aisling, analysed the performance with and without and normalised that performance and found that it did lead to an overall improvement in throughput. That's all. I'm still on that first slide, but I've gone off on a segue, but now I'll come back to this. And in this, we used our machine learning and our artificial intelligence to predict and alert because that's part of my background. We then did it for a second year and it was equally successful, but it was a large overhead for data analytics research to do. So we looked at institutionalizing it. In other words, going to the university and saying, hey, look, this works. Let's build it into the system. But in order to do this, it required a lot of data upheavals. And by that phrase, I mean that it required reorganization of the data is gathered in the university and using it for purposes for which it had not been designed. So we were promised this, and there's a large project going on, I'm sure it's the same in every other university, which is aggregating and harmonizing the data across the different silos in which it sits. So I'm waiting for that output to reach a conclusion so that I can then come back and say that prediction part we know to work. Now we have easier access to the data and it can be institutionalized. So there I am waiting for this, drumming my fingers on the tabletop, waiting for the years as this arrives. And we've also had another, since then we've had another big development within our university, which is DCU Futures, which will address a number of literacies in a different approach to third level education. And those literacies include health literacy. And the health literacy aspect, which covers aspects of mental health, will ultimately be made available to all students. So that will happen next year. But in the meantime, last year and the year before, the gap between the institutionalizing of harmonized data and health literacy being taken over by somebody else, the DCU Futures, I got a little bit impatient. So I developed a module called Flourish at Dublin City University in collaboration with colleagues at University College Dublin, larger university on the other side of the city, who did similar. And the versions in UCD and DCU have a lot of overlap, but differences, and that's what I'm going to describe in this presentation. I'm going to rattle through these very quickly because I'm speaking to the choir here, singing to the choir, in that you know about mental health. It's a big issue. There was a survey of thousands of students, severe levels of anxiety, formal diagnosis of mental health difficulties, 32.2%. That's nearly a third of them, and so on. And that was a 2019 survey. And then there was COVID. And then there was a similar survey, I think you can post that link now, Gráinne, if you can, to a survey carried out of 19,000 young adults in Ireland, and only 42% of them are normal, which means that 58% are not in the normal range for depression and anxiety. And during COVID, our university support services across our 8 universities in Ireland received more than 11,000 requests from students for student counselling. For a country of our size, that's a huge number and a huge proportion of the student population. And one of the interesting things that I discovered in looking at all of these reports is that the main stressors of those students are university life, which includes timetabling and getting to the right building and using the VLE system and the kind of things that Liz pointed out earlier on. Managing their finances, right, which is also a huge for most people in life, and that one's not going to go away for the rest of their life, and worrying about their future. So those 3 things: university life, managing their finances, and worrying about their future. So I started to think about how we could use data, and on one side of my brain, and on the other side of my brain, I'm hearing all this stuff about wellness courses and the fact that we in a university don't yet do something structured across our university population. So I became aware of the many wellness courses that are available. The Science of Happiness is the poster child of it at Yale, which is run by Laurie Santos, and she's back now, having taken a sabbatical from the stresses of running it. Similar courses at Berkeley and elsewhere appearing in Europe. And as I looked at all of these courses, I realized that most of them, practically all of them, miss a trick, to my mind, in that they don't use students' own personal data in any way. And I think that that's a gap, because our students are comfortable with their data, with gathering their data, and don't see how it can be exploited or used to their benefit. And mostly personal data has a bad press, because the only time we hear about personal data is about how it is abused and how it is misused. But personal data can be a force for good if it is used properly. So what we do in the Flourish module, or the Flourish modules, the one in DCU that I'm going to talk about and the one in UCD, is that we do a double literacy. We present a topic which covers health literacy and also covers data literacy together. So you can post the second link now, Grania. This is the Flourish module, and it is a standalone page, which is the yellow banner on the top there. Welcome to Flourish. Flourish is based on more than 2 years of background work at UCD and DCU. And during that background work, we talked to students, we talked to student leaders, we talked to health experts, we talked to faculty, and we had interviews and group meetings. We had pilot versions of Flourish, which ran at both universities. And where UCD ended up is that Flourish in UCD is an optional module available to all years and earns them 5 credits, which form part of their degree program. Now, to me, that's great. And I think that has a role or a niche. But I was interested in Flourish, which would have a larger reach across the student population and wouldn't necessarily have to form part of the 5 credits that they had to pass. And if they didn't pass, they failed the year. So Flourish in DCU, in my university, was last year a year-long module. It was only available to second-year undergraduates, and I chose second years because first years are too stressed trying to find their way as to where is the library, and they've got too many other things going on. They don't want yet another thing. Third years, many of our students go on intra or on industry placement. Final year, too many stresses about their final grade. So we restricted it last year to being just a year-long module available to second-year undergraduates. It's an extracurricular, which means it doesn't form part of the 60 credits they get for their degree program, and it's an option. Yet it is accredited and formally approved, and it's delivered entirely online. By accredited, I mean that it earns 5 ECTS credits for students who choose to successfully complete the module. And you don't have to successfully complete the module. You can dive in and do a bit of it, do a bit more of it, do a lot of it, decide to do the assignments and get the credits, but only if you want to. For the 5 credits, for those who do complete the assignments, the 5 credits awarded as micro-credentials. And what we're doing as a result of the success, and I'll describe this later on in the talk, is that we're now making this available across all of years, undergraduate and postgraduate, across all campuses and across all degree programs. And we can do this because it's entirely on Loop or Moodle. Students who took the module last year, remember it was available to second year only, took the module because they wanted to. They didn't have to. It was an option, an extracurricular activity, yet we had more than 170 students who took that module, and about 50 of them did the assignments and got the credits. The other 120 still got value from the parts of Flourish that they chose to engage with. I'm going to play 2 videos now at the same time, but there's no audio, and they're at the side. So the content for the Flourish module is on the VLE, the institutional VLE, and for every one of the 10 topics, we have interview-style videos between the module organizer, myself, and up to 20 different subjects. So for a subject like sleep, I might have interviewed 2 or 3 people. For another subject like nutrition, it might have been 2 or 3 different people. And the videos are recorded as bite-sized. They are not 1-hour videos with PowerPoint in the background, right? They are chat show type things. Somebody said to me once, Jesus, Alan, you must think you're Graham Norton the way you're interviewing people like this, but they don't pay me anything like they pay Graham Norton. And the videos that are playing are 2 of the videos. One of them is from the digital footprint, and the other one is from behavior change. The videos are captioned. They're only 5 minutes long, and then there's a break in some assignments or some things, and then there's another 5 to 6 minute video, and then there's another 5 to 6 minute video, and that makes them more digestible. You don't have to sit through a 15-minute video.
Dan, a sec.
Oh, that's me. I don't know what that was. I don't know what that is. Maybe it's the audio on the video. I don't know. Oh, maybe it's me. Yeah. Sorry. So they're bite-sized. So people prefer to take 3 5-minute videos rather than a 15-minute video, or shock horror, a 1-hour video. The topics in the module include sleep, nutrition, work habits, procrastination, relationships with others, which can be sort of loved ones as well as colleagues, physical activity and exercise and movement, positive psychology, life quality, alcohol and drugs, and alcohol and drug abuse, safe sex, digital footprints and digital literacy, behavior change, and more. So they're the sort of the generic topics which appear in one or more of the individual module things. Now, if I go to the next slide, how do I do this? The people who were involved in this, I was not the expert. I never presented myself as the expert. I presented myself as being the person talking to experts. And students like that because we all love to eavesdrop. We love to hear what people are talking about when we're in the tube. We love to listen to other people. We love to, when we're sitting in a restaurant or a cafe, you listen to what other people are saying because that's a natural inclination. And that's the way this was presented. It was never presented as in talking to the students. It was talking to me, which is why we always love chat shows. And all of these people on the Rogues Gallery there are the experts in sleep and nutrition and exercise. And they come from our schools of psychology, business school, school of nursing, school of health and human performance, school of computing. All of these experts were more than delighted to be interviewed with me, although the interviews were pre-canned. We knew what they were going to say. And then after the interview, they were cut and pasted and made into that attractive looking video format that we saw on the previous slide. And the people over on this side were some of the students who helped me to deliver and to put this thing together. For each of the 10 topics, students were given, or for 8 of the 10, they were given an option to do an assignment if they wanted to. And for the assignments involved students gathering their own data on their sleep or on their nutrition or their exercise or their physical activity levels or their work habits or more. And what they did was that for that data that they gathered, they used this to learn about themselves and how changes in their lives were reflected in their own personal data. So, for example, for the sleep module, I was talking to a couple of experts about sleep, about how you can measure it, about how important it is, about what it is, and about consequences of poor sleep, etc. And then for the assignment, measure your sleep using anything. Use a Fitbit, use a Oura ring, use an app, use whatever you want. Measure it for a week and see what your baseline sleep is. And then do some intervention. Go to bed earlier, right? Or don't drink coffee after 12 o'clock in the day, or some other, whatever the invention might be. And then measure your sleep for the week after and compare the before and the after. And then when you see that, this is the student, and you say, oh, I can see that actually makes a difference. It drives home to them what they've been hearing the experts say. And then to submit the assignment, no, don't give us the data. We don't want anything like that. Write a blog post about what you learned from that assignment and submit that. And it was the blog post, not the data, that was submitted for the assignment for assessment. And the assessment was done on a pass-fail, so there was no grades associated with it. So there was no sense, oh, I want to get a first in this module. You either passed it by doing the data gathering, by submitting a blog post on it, and then you got that and you were happy. Flourish has strong endorsement from across the university. So all of the faculties, all of the deans of teaching and learning, the student union, the Student Support and Development Services, the senior management, right up to the university president, were all saying, yes, this is great, yes, this is great, and they give support and they'd advertise it and encourage it. So we ran it last year for the 170 students who took the module. We also had support from Fitbit, now owned by Google. Not that we needed it or not that we asked for it, but another part of the university came along and said, look, we're talking to Fitbit Google and they want to help us in some way. Can you talk to them about Flourish? So I went in and talked about Flourish and they said, oh yeah, that's brilliant. Can we give you 100 Fitbits? And I went, wow, okay, yeah, I can give them to 100 students. So they donated 100 Fitbits, but we only made the fact that the Fitbits were available after the registration deadline. Okay, and then what we did was we randomly selected 100 students from across the King and just gave them a Fitbit each. Even if they already had a Fitbit, didn't really matter. So they were distributed randomly among the students. They weren't a reward, they weren't an incentive, they were kind of a bonus at the end. And as part of that arrangement with Fitbit, we wrote a report describing our experiences of it. We analysed the loop accesses to the VLE version of the Flourish module, similar to what I'd done previously a couple of years ago. And we interviewed many of the students. So we got both qualitative and quantitative feedback from students. So what did they think of Flourish? And of course, I'm going to select just some of the questions. On a scale of 1 to 7, it helped improve my overall wellness. It looks it up as the average is up at the 5.5 or close to 6. So yes, it improved that for the majority of students who replied, and has changed my understanding of my personal data. Because remember, this is 2 literacies that they're seeing. They're getting literacy about their health and about how they can improve things like their sleep, their nutrition, their exercise activity, etc. But they're also getting a data literacy. They're realizing that their own personal data can be used by them as a force for good for them. Okay, and that improved. What topics did they engage with? Well, as you could imagine, at the start of the first semester, you're going to get a lot more engagement, and you'd expect to see a curve which tails off like this. But the one which jumps out is sleep. Sleep was one that we were surprised with the amount of engagement that students had, and not only in looking at the topic, but also in submitting assignments on that. Sleep was the standout topic compared to all of the others, although there were none which were significantly lower than the others. Healthy habits was close to the end of the second semester, so maybe there was pressure on from other assignments, etc., to do that. But that's a kind of a skewed distribution, which is kind of what you'd expect when you look at the 10 topics. On a scale of 1 to 7, Flourish has helped to improve my sleep. Yeah, so again, this just reinforces what the previous graph would have shown. What did they say? Well, in some of the interviews, and they weren't saying, you know, we weren't there with the clipboard, tell me something nice that we can write this down. So they said things like, after viewing the content of Flourish, I was amazed just how much my information is being stored on different servers. It speaks to data literacy. Or overall, the assignment increased my physical activity for the week, but I'd say it was more beneficial to my mental health than my physical health. Remember, this was during COVID times. I really enjoyed the Fitbit challenges and receiving the Fitbit badges. I should try and appreciate the effort I put in and learn to take a breather, guilt-free. I think that's a great quote. It's given me a new perspective on the balance between my studies and my the rest of my life. So Flourish and digital literacies. Flourish blends health and digital literacies, specifically the awareness of personal data and its potential for good. Sorry, Grania, I've just remembered the third link, which points to the report launch, if you put that in the chat as well. So if anybody wants to see the report that I'm talking about, Grania will post the link and you can get that. These health literacies and digital literacies are 21st century skills, which heretofore they're not formally taught to students, but they are learnt anecdotally from peers or, shock horror, from social media. So they learn about their health literacies and they learn about their digital literacies from sources that are not necessarily as reputable. And these are, as I said, 21st century skills, which are not, heretofore were not formally taught. Now, I wouldn't say that we taught these skills to these students. We presented them and had them learn them themselves, those that choose to do so. So as a recap then, last slide, is that student wellness and student well-being is hugely important, and that's a given, right? And we need to teach it or to present some aspects of it to our students, because we can't just stand back and let them learn it from other sources. Second point is that personal data does have a bad reputation, but it can be used as a force for good if it is not misused and if it is used properly. Students who sit through Flourish can see this firsthand, because they can choose to do the assignments and take part in the data gathering on themselves and so on. And then lastly, Flourish is about student wellness, and it brings a bonus of digital literacy. So I think we've been successfully able to blend the two together. For this year, as I said, we're making it available right across campuses. No idea what the uptake would be. It could be anything from 200 to, I don't know, thousands of students. But it'll be certainly interesting to see what the uptake will be among this incoming student population. And I think that's the last of my slides. It is the last of my slides, yes. Now, how do I stop the screen sharing? Oh, did it.
Thanks, Alan. A fascinating presentation. We'd like to invite questions now. If anybody from the audience would like to ask a question. I can't see any hands up at the moment, and maybe I'll kick off, I guess. So just from my perspective, I'd be interested to know how you're going to roll this or embed it in the student supports in Dublin City University. Are you engaging with the student support departments or Ashling's department in terms of how this can be embedded more broadly?
Yeah, and indeed, some of the speakers who contributed, who I would have interviewed, for example, come from student support. One was the student nurse. So, you know, it was really interesting to talk to him about the facilities that are available, and, you know, when students have issues to go to the health centre, and here it is, it's in this building, all that sort of stuff. We also had our student support unit preview each of the topics before they were made available online, before they were presented. And then in many of those topics, they would say, oh, we have a resource here, you can add that. So the student services resources were then selectively added on as they chose to do so. So the students, when they looked at the module, looked at a topic, got not just the experts and the links that I would have put together, but also from within DCU as well.
Fantastic. Aisling Crean, I see you have your hand up if you'd like to come online.
Hello there, Alan. Thanks very much for your very interesting presentation. I'm from the University of St Andrews, but you can probably guess that I'm also from Dublin. So I had a very quick I had a very quick question about the role of Google. So I was very interested that Google gave you these Fitbits and rolled them out to students. And I guess my question is, did Google also have access then to the data that was gathered?
No, we didn't
No.
have access to the data that was gathered.
Okay. Yeah.
Although probably back in Google they may have had access because Fitbit owns Google, so
Right.
stored on.
Yeah.
But no. The reason that happened or that came about is that our educational trust, our fundraising, has been talking to Google about many things, and they had some discretionary budget at the end of their financial year. And to be honest with you, the unit cost to them of a Fitbit compared to what you'd pay for it in the shops was a fraction. So they were delighted with to be able to report back to their management that there was no data sharing.
Lovely. And the other question I had is, so I thought of it, what Grania was saying is like, how you embed stuff like this in student support was very interesting. But I was wondering how you embed it in other facets of the university. For example, university finance offices sometimes send students very fierce, emails about, their fees, for example.
Yeah.
And of course, that's one of the classic things that cause student anxiety. The other one, of course, particularly in Dublin, given the accommodation crisis, is a lack of accommodation. So I was wondering whether there was some way to kind of coordinate with, say, the finance office or the accommodation office on questions about kind of the root causes of student anxiety, being to do with perhaps the character partly of the emails that are sent out sometimes. I mean, is there any way to gather data on, more data on what exactly is it that's causing a student to be more anxious than they were perhaps in the past?
Wouldn't it be great if we had parts of, arms of this octopus, this multi-headed octopus that is the university, talking to each other? And no, we're a long way from that. Even the Flourish module, getting this accredited in the university was like pushing a rock up a hill, right?
Yeah.
And getting it on the student registration system, I have to be very careful here in case some of my colleagues from DCU are here, they might rat on me. Getting it on the student registration system was not possible.
Yeah.
So in order to get them to register, I have to create a separate registration form. It's just a Google form. In order to make it available, its availability, and to make students aware of that as part of their student registration, that's not possible. So my best friend, apart from Aisling, right, McKenna, in DCU, in advertising Flourish, is the people who control the social media, the Twitter feed, the Instagram feed, and the promotion of that. So the promotion of Flourish is done on social media by our communications unit, not by our registry. So if we can't even get that part talking to each other, right? No, Flourish is a good thing. Hey, registry, let's make it easy. So when students come along to register, they look at the modules, they choose that one. What's this Flourish as an option? Yeah, I'll choose that one as well. Not possible. Vicky Pollard, computer says no.
Okay, thanks very much. I might email you afterwards. It was a really interesting presentation. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Alan, for answering that question. We're nearly out of time, so I'm going to just close off by asking one final question. Really, what's your future vision for this? Are you going to roll it out further? And do you plan on doing any kind of analytics around the student performance in their exams? And because that cohort of 170 have actually reflected on their behaviour, is there any correlation between maybe future performance and how they behave going forward?
This will be the last year to run Flourish. It will then be sunsetted because the DCU Futures aspect of the university will take over the health literacy and making that available to students. So this was a stopgap for 2 years. It's been successful in terms of the feedback we get, but we will not be doing any analytics in terms of student performance. The level of analysis we will do will be exactly what was shown in the slides there. Which topics were most popular? That's still the level. Beyond that, I've no interest in going any further than that because I don't think there's any value in it. Thanks
so much for coming today and presenting to the HEIR network members. So we'll close off this session now, and I'm going to hand over to Phil Gravestock, who will introduce our poster session.
Thank you very much indeed, and it's